Welcome back to the Scarlet and Gray Report podcast. And so tomorrow, it's a big week for Ohio State recruiting. And tomorrow, Luke Montgomery, the 2023 offensive lineman out of Findlay, will be announcing his commitment. Ohio State is in the running and a major player in this commitment. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to get a national perspective on Ohio State's recruiting class. So we're joined today by Clint Cosgrove, the national recruiting analyst in the Rivals Network. How's it going, Clint?
Oh, fantastic. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to come on.
Yeah, man, it's awesome, man. So I kind of wanted to get, I viewed this, Ohio State has already been forming its 2023 class, and they're kind of in the middle of building this thing, already a couple of commitments already, but I kind of wanted to get your perspective on 2022 and kind of what it means heading into 2023. We're going to go a little bit in order on this. So was there a player or maybe a trend that you saw from Ohio State's last recruiting class that you're like, yeah, this kind of represented the amount of success that Ohio State had in 2022?
Yeah, for sure. There was a couple things that stand out about it. And I recently I had to grade each Big Ten class, and Ohio State was one of the schools that I gave an A to. And the reason for that is the strength of the class from top to bottom, from the very top guy to the very bottom guy, as we say, rankings wise, not saying they will end up being the bottom guy, just the overall strength. There are a number of players who are going to come in and be able to contribute right away. And you have those guys physically ready, elite talent. And then you've got the guys that are maybe a little down the line that are going to eventually, they're developmental players with extremely high ceilings. So that's the first thing that really stands out to me about the class. Second, it's their third straight Big Ten recruiting title, which is extremely impressive. It shows what they're doing on the road. It shows that the success of the program is obviously transitioning to the recruiting trail. Some of the players that I really like, you've got those guys at the top, like CJ Hicks. I mean, 5-star linebacker. You don't see a lot of 5-star linebackers. When you're a 5-star player, you're considered a future, first round draft pick. And, that's just a testament to his skill set, his ability. I mean, he's physically ready to contribute in some form right away. One guy that I really like and he reclassified is Alex Stiles. There aren't very many players with his size that are as athletic as he is. I mean, this guy can play anything from the secondary down to defensive end. I think he gives them a lot of versatility as far as a schematic, standpoint on the defense. Eventually he'll probably be playing on the edge, but he has the athleticism of a safety. He can cover, he can rush the passer, he can, play in space. There's just so much to like about him. The other thing that's really interesting about this, and you don't see this a lot, is Ohio State was able to take a top 3 player from 6 different states. And that's impressive. You don't see that a lot. Yeah. And to be able to do that just shows that Ohio State is a national brand. They're getting after it on the recruiting trail. They're putting in the work. They're identifying the right guys. So from top to bottom, really impressive. I can't say enough about the class. I gave them an A for a reason, and they were probably the class of the Big Ten once again.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the athleticism from Alex Stiles, and I mean that's something I saw in person. I mean, just him playing for Pick Central, playing basketball. I mean, it's not his sport of choice, but I mean, he was dunking he was an animal, and just using just this God-given athletic ability that, I mean, I don't know what, I mean, Ohio State hasn't had a lot of success in terms of, I mean, well, when it had Quinn Ewers reclassify, he wasn't quite ready to make that jump yet. So it's really not a great track record over the past year. But I mean, it seems like something based on his kind of athleticism, his build. I mean, it could be a good way to, or a good opportunity for that quick transition. I mean, his dad was an Ohio State player. His brother's at Notre Dame. Like, he has that track record of knowing what big time college football is. I mean, do you feel like that transition could be a bit easier than, say, it might have been for Quinn Ewers?
Yeah, and I think you have to look at the position there.
Yeah.
For Quinn Ewers, quarterback is the hardest position to come in and play right away.
Yeah.
The game just moves so much faster. You're trying to gel with the players around you. You're trying to earn their respect. You have to command a huddle. There's just so many different variables that a skill set alone doesn't guarantee success. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Whereas with a player like Styles, whether it be, wherever he's going to play, his just natural athletic ability, his natural given physical skill set, they're going to find a way to get him on the field. And I don't know if that starts with special teams. I don't know if it's, situationally rushing the passer, but there's a role for him. And I think that transition, because of the position, is just so much easier. And like you said, he knows what to expect. He's got a brother who's a standout at Notre Dame already. His dad's been through it. This guy comes from a football family. He was made for this. Yeah, and it's hard to keep a player like him at a position that he will play, which is to be determined, I guess, off the field. He'll be able to contribute in some way. And the crazy thing is he's just scratching the surface of what he can be. He's very raw mechanically when you watch him. When he actually fills out and he's used to his body, he's going to be a terror. And I'm really excited about him. But I see at least, maybe it's a third down role or a situational role where they will be able to use him. And I do think the transition, just position-wise, is a lot easier than it was for Quinn.
And I mean, if I know anything in my, brief interactions with Jim Knowles, he has connections with his linebackers. I would not be surprised if Alex Styles makes that linebacker room and makes a difference right away for this team. And he can make him a star. I really do believe that. But kind of going back to the 22 class as a whole, I mean, it was pretty much secured by the time that all of the changes happened for Ohio State, with, the hire of Jim Knowles, Perry Eliano, Tim Walton, Justin Fry, like all these guys. But how do you feel? I mean, is it kind of hard to determine the momentum because of that, like from 22 to 23, because it looks so different in terms of who's recruiting these kids, or kind of how does all the changes affect, Ohio State's momentum heading into next recruiting cycle?
Well, I think it all starts at the top, and the head man's still the same guy. Coach Day is still there. He's hiring guys who fit his brand of football, that fit his philosophy. So, if a coach has a special connection with a player, that can take a hit, especially if that coach goes to somewhere else. It's another big name school and is going to continue to recruit him there. That can take a hit. So that can be an uphill battle. But at the same time, Ohio State's a national brand. Yeah. It sells themselves. Now you've got to have good recruiters to sell that national brand, because you're competing as a national brand. You're competing against other national brands. So I think that's one part of it. But you look at the guys that have been brought in. You talk about Knowles. You talk about Eliano. Like I talked to Malik Hartford recently about his, we messaged about his recently released top schools, and he's like, Coach Eliano was my guy. He's like, and Cincinnati's one of his finalists too. He's like, now he's over at Ohio State. That's an easy transition. Yeah. So there's going to be carryover. And you look at a guy like Knowles, and you talk about his connection with players. He recruited my brother, I think, back when he was at Cornell or something. And I know my brother had a lot of respect for him. And so I think you bring in guys who fit the culture, fit the program, and they have the want to. And I don't think you're going to see a big drop off. So I do think that momentum continues because of the strength of the program, because of the brand of the program, and because the head man up top. It all starts up top. And I do see that momentum continuing.
Is there a guy from, the 23 or 24 prospects that you've talked to, one of those new assistant coaches, whether it's Knowles, Fry, Eliano, or Walton, that guys have been like, yeah, this guy's really stood out to me as a solid recruiter over his first few months with Ohio State?
I haven't necessarily heard that outside of I did hear it about Eliano. And I'm familiar with him. He coached with my dad at one point. So I know him as well. And I can see that he can connect with players. And so there isn't one in particular, but going back to what I kind of said before, like I talked to Christian Gray this weekend and I asked, what are you looking forward to when you go up to Ohio State? And he's going to use them as one of his officials, I believe. He said, I want to meet the new staff. I want to see why Coach Day hired them. And he goes, but at the end of the day, I trust Coach Day. Yeah. I just want to see it for myself in person. And so I haven't necessarily heard a lot of specific names. It's more been about getting up to Ohio State. Yeah. And I think when you're at a place like that and you've set a culture in place, and you have coaches that are capable and want to recruit, I think it kind of all falls together. But, just from talking to like Luke Montgomery, or whether it be Hintzman last year, like when you have a transition, it can always be hard for a player because they associate that school with a certain coach. But when that guy comes in and they're part of the program, and they treat the player right, and they show them love, and they show that they care, you've got to show these kids that you care before you're going to be able to coach them hard. Yeah. And I think that's part of the culture. And as long as they're doing that and they fit in with the culture and continue the message from the top, unless a guy's just not getting after it on the recruiting trail, I don't think you're going to see, a situation where guys are like, well, I'm not going to Ohio State because so-and-so isn't there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I told you before we started that I was going to end with this question, but it seemed like it's kind of flowing toward, over the past 4 years or so, Ryan Day has kind of continued this powerhouse that Urban Meyer set, when he came in 2012, in terms of this focus on recruiting, building this culture that, players across the country have wanted to be a part of, no matter who's on staff. You've seen a lot of the same characters, whether it was Kerry Combs for a long time, Larry Johnson, these guys that, are kind of mainstays in Columbus since 2015. I'm curious, from a national perspective, what do you view as Ryan Day's legacy in terms of recruiting over his time as Ohio State's head coach? Because it seems like, whether it's you, whether it's recruits that I talk to, whether it's players in the program currently, it's all about culture. It's all about culture and kind of the tone that he sets. Do you see that from kids? Is that something that they want to be a part of?
Yeah, 100%. And that's what I have heard more than anything, more than any specific coach or anything about Columbus. I have heard there is a winning culture. Like, they take it serious. It is about being a pro day in and day out and wanting to compete for championships. That is the one thing that stands out, and that culture is ingrained. Carson Hintzman talking about why he made his decision. He felt like it put him in the best position to have the most success. I talked to Caleb Brown the other day. They talk about winning national championships. That is the mindset when you go there. They talk about the players when they're on campus and how the culture vibes with each player in that locker room. And the message is the same from the players, from the coaches, from the head man. Mm-hmm. And I think all of that is so important. Culture is more than just how it feels when you're in the building. It's everybody agreeing with, feeling, and giving the same message through in and throughout. And that is something that is definitely being done. Now, I haven't been there. I haven't witnessed it firsthand, but from talking to the recruits, whether they've signed there, whether they're being recruited there, that is a message that has been consistent across the board. So as far as his recruiting legacy goes, I would say, and I'm new to, being on the national team, but I've done this for a long time, whether it be coaching college football, whether it be scouting. I would say his legacy as a recruiter so far, or leading a team of recruiters, is very impressive. And there's definitely an ingrained culture and message that is consistent across the board from top to bottom, that's even being relayed by current players, by players that just signed, to the incoming recruits. So I'd say it's very impressive. It's well organized, it's well thought out, and it's not an easy thing to do. So it's very impressive.
Well, it's the same message coming from the coaching staff too. I mean, kind of on the opposite side. I haven't talked to all the recruits that you have, but I mean, it's this emphasis on, it's not getting the best kids in the room. It's about getting the best guys to fit that culture that they're trying to build, so the collective can chase those national championships and those things that they want. Because I mean, we just talked with Gene Smith, the athletic director at Ohio State today, and he was talking about the atmosphere surrounding Ohio State after the loss to Michigan. And he's like, yeah, it led to a bunch of defensive coaching changes and things like that. And he had said something that got me. It's like, we don't ever want it to happen again, the loss to Michigan. And then he followed that up with, we don't expect it to happen again. So it's this mentality of, okay, we're going to be the best. It's not a matter of if, it's not a matter of what happened last year. It's a matter of when. And I think that's something that the recruits are buying in from that coaching staff, this consistent message of, it doesn't matter what happened last year. It doesn't matter what happened against Michigan. The goal is still the same. There's no drop off here. And I think that's something that recruits can really, really relate to. And that's just because it's coming from the top down. And it's interesting. And I think that's really, it's going into what Justin Fry can do with Ohio State, because I mean, first of all, it helps a lot that he already had a relationship with Ryan Day when they were both at Temple, when they were both at Boston College. They're both coming from the Chip Kelly tree. But I'm curious from a national perspective here too, is, Luke Montgomery is kind of this first target. Yes, he's gotten to know some of the guys in the 22 class, whether it's, Carson, whether it's George Fitzpatrick, Tegric Shabola, like these guys that are Avery Henry. He's getting to know them, and it's a process. He didn't recruit them. He did recruit George Fitzpatrick a little bit when he was at UCLA, but it wasn't kind of the long-term fit there. But I'm curious, heading into tomorrow with, as of right now, less than 24 hours until Luke Montgomery commits, what could this mean? What could it do if Luke Montgomery were to choose the Buckeyes? I mean, do you feel like that's just setting the tone for something special from Ryan Day? Is it more about Ryan Day? Is it more about Justin Fry? I'm not sure. What do you kind of view, having talked to Luke, and kind of what would it mean, I guess, in the long run?
Well, I think it's big. He's obviously a top target. He's from within the state, and he has options that are of the name brands of college football. I mean, you can go to Clemson, you can go to Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State. Like, he has the options. And I think if he were to choose Ohio State in the end, I think it says a lot. I think it does show that, the offensive line coach is going to be able to land the top talent, which is important. Now, whether it be the relationships that he builds, or whether it be he can sit down in a room and show him how he's going to develop a player, how he can sell the program, whatever it may be, I think it does show that he has a bright future as a recruiter. I think it shows that Ohio State is going to continue to battle and win the top talent in the state if he were to commit. Now, if they were to not land him, at the same time, I don't think it's the end of the world. Luke also has another year, which they can continue to battle, and he's in their backyard. So I think, that helps as well. So I hate to judge off of one commitment, although Luke is as big as it gets when it comes to getting an offensive lineman. He's a special player, special kid. But I do think it shows that things are going to continue to go in the right direction. The offensive line is going to continue to be strong. And, whether it be Coach Day, whether it be the program as a whole, whether it be the new offensive line coach, things are going good if you land a player like that. And I think that momentum continues.
Do you feel like, I mean, because there's a lot of, whether it's Trevor Lauck out of Indianapolis or there's that kid, Austin Searveld out of Liberty Township, Ohio.
Yep.
These kids that, I mean, Midwest, I mean, these should be close to, at least if you're Ohio State, you got to try and get them. You got to try, like those have to be locks for your offensive line if you're Ohio State. Do you feel like Luke Montgomery, and maybe it's too early to tell with these kids, but like it could be kind of a domino effect. Like, okay, if Luke's there, then maybe Austin can join. Maybe Trevor can join, especially knowing Justin Fry's connection with Indiana, being a grad and knowing that area very well. I mean, could it just kind of be a domino effect, you think, or what could Luke Montgomery's commitment mean in that regard?
Yeah, I think it definitely could be, especially from an in-state perspective with a kid like Austin. I talked to him the other day. We did an interview when he posted his, was it top 6, I believe. I see Ohio State already being up there for him, even though he has a great list of offers. When you see another in-state kid, especially a guy who's a leader like Luke, a personable guy, a guy that, wherever he goes, he's going to be recruiting right off the bat. And he's a kid that other kids are going to relate with. So I do think it could be a domino effect. Does it happen overnight? I don't know. But I think that is a big pull when you get a player like that, especially a player that has been going to all these other big name schools, meeting the recruits while he's there, staying in contact with them. I do think that's a big pull. And just talking with Luke, I mean, he's got that infectious personality. And I know that he wants to be a coach in the future. So like that would be his first recruiting assignment, probably, Yeah. So I do think, especially with an in-state kid like Searveld, I don't know as much if it would have as much impact with a kid from Indiana, although it's close to home. But, I do think that makes an impact if Luke were to decide to commit early, because that gives him plenty of time to start recruiting these other offensive linemen, other players, other top talent. And it never hurts to have a big time player like him in the boat, especially when you look at an elite level talent going to your position. You say, well, if he goes there, why wouldn't I? So at the end of the day, I do think that would have some sort of domino effect, whether we see it right away or down the road.
So let's look big picture then. Who are a few guys that you've seen? You've been all over the place as of late. I'm curious, like, who are a few guys that you're like, yeah, this could be a future Buckeye?
Yeah, I mean, just guys that I recently talked to, whether it be Cedric Hawkins. I just talked to him this weekend. I had an interview with him, but got bumped over while it was recording, and it all got messed up. There was music bumping, but I mean, that's a kid from Florida. He plays on South Florida Express, has all these other big name players. So he's in their ear. Sharif Denson's on that same team, and I talked with him. He mentioned Ohio State as a place. Carnell Tate. Now, he just earned his 5th star, and he's on the same team as Brandon Ennis, another person who I talked to who mentioned Ohio State, who is our number 1 receiver right now, another 5-star guy. They play on the same 7-on-7 team. Carnell Tate, to me, and he's a Midwest kid originally. He's from Chicago. Notre Dame and Ohio State were considered early leans, but now, since he's been down at IMG, all these other schools are in the mix. We got LSU, we've got Alabama. He's got a chance to be the number 1 receiver in the class. He really does. He is a special player, but Ohio State, when I talk to him, is going to be up there in the end. Christian Gray, I just talked with him. He hasn't released a top 5, a top 10, a top 4. He's not going to. He did give a good idea in the article that I just released, that Ohio State will be one of his visits. And what he said in that interview was he wants, and I mentioned this earlier, I think, it might have been with you off air, but that he wants to meet the new coaches and see. He trusts Coach Day, but he wants to see in person why he hired him. And so that's a big time player. I mean, Christian Gray's a 4-star kid, and he is far from being done developing. He's already a special player. There's just a number of kids that Ohio State's going to have a chance at, and they're going to continue to have special classes. Malik Harford, like I said, with his relationship with Coach Eliano, I would have guessed that maybe Cincinnati would be an early lean because that's kind of the home. But, Ohio State's in the picture, and there's a lot of very good players just in the past weekend alone that I've talked to that are national game-changing type players that Ohio State is going to be in the mix for at the end. It might come down to, do they get too many commits at a certain position and not be able to take some of these kids? So it's definitely a school that's at the top for a lot of these blue chippers.
It's funny that you started with Cedric Hawkins, because I remember I was in the press box in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl, and this kid commits. I'm like, where the heck did this come from? Like, it was one of the strangest. Because
why now?
Exactly. It was because he hadn't really visited. It was strange, but there was that early connection, because I talked to him shortly thereafter. He just wanted to be a part. It was the culture that we were talking about. And it'll be interesting to see, because he is kind of like, over the course of, Ty Lockwood's been there forever. Joshua Padilla's been there forever. Like these guys, Cedric Hawkins seems like kind of the forgotten man, especially in the long run, but he could be a big factor here, especially if he keeps that commitment out of Florida. He could kind of set the tone here, I think. Especially if he kind of did it, I wouldn't say on a whim, but it was very, very quickly. It was very quickly. So it'll be interesting. Is that kind of the perception you got of him too, or what?
Yeah, he was fired up about Ohio State. You should see the smile on his face when we talked about it. There's probably, they've got 3 of the 15 or 16 5-stars in the 23 class on that South Florida Express team alone. They've got 2024 team that has Clemson commits on it already. He's going to be trying to get other guys up there. So, all those guys, they respect each other. They're going to respect each other's decisions, but, it doesn't mean they're not going to try to give a good shot at bringing some of them with them up to Ohio State. So there's a number of players on that team, and I don't know where Ohio State is with Cormani McClain, who is also on that team, who I must say is maybe the best high school corner that I have ever seen.
Wow.
He is special. He's kind of wide open. He's kind of quiet about where he wants to go, but there's a number of players that Cedric will definitely be in the ear of on that team. So that definitely never hurts.
So let's wrap it up with this. And because we know, obviously you were talking about kind of Ohio State standing in the Big Ten, and obviously, Ohio State's a perennial playoff team. They're a team that contends for national titles every single year, but it hasn't won a title in a while. So a lot of those are going down south, whether it's, not this past year, but Clemson, and then there's the Bamas, there's the Georgias, there's the Texases and Oklahomas, like these powerhouses that are returning type thing. And with all the changes with, new conferences, and it just a whole hell of a lot of changes. It's just crazy. But I'm curious of where you see Ohio State standing in terms of those national brands that we were talking about. Are they right up there? Are they, if Bama and Georgia are 1A, is Ohio State 1B? Where do you see them?
They're definitely in the conversation with all of these other schools. And I don't think the lack of actually winning a title in the last couple of years hurts them. I think the kids look at it and they say they're in the title race every year. They get guys like me, we're going to win a title. These kids believe in themselves.
Yeah.
And so if they think that they're one player away, maybe they're that player in their mind. And so I don't think that hurts at all. Now, when you look at Bama, when you look at Georgia, the biggest difference that you have, and although Ohio produces a lot of Division I prospects for being in the Midwest, the biggest difference that you have is the majority of the talent is coming from Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Texas, and California, none of which are a short drive from Ohio. So for Ohio, they've got to do a little more work to go down into Alabama's backyard, Georgia's backyard, Florida's backyard to go and get these top players. Now, the fact that a player from Florida always, I mean, these top kids, when I talked to them this week, Ohio State was always one of the teams that they brought up. The fact that they are able to get players from that area that are elite caliber is a big time thing that allows them to compete on the national stage. And I do not think the lack of a very recent national title really hurts that. These kids know that they're in the race. They know that they're going to compete every year. And I think at the end of the day, they believe in themselves. And if they get enough of themselves, they believe that they can, turn Ohio State into that next national championship team. And, you rarely hear outside of, at least for the Midwest, outside of Notre Dame and Ohio State, a kid from down there that's a national recruit that is naming a Midwest school. It's mostly warm weather schools. It's USC. If it's going to be out West, it is, Miami now, Florida, Alabama, Clemson, Georgia. And, Ohio State, they're in the conversation with those schools. And at the end of the day, you got to sign the kids. But at the end of the day, it's important to be in the conversation to have a chance to sign those players. And really being in the conversation is really the hardest part. And Ohio State is doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah,
it's been a pleasure, and I'm sure over the course of the summer, when visits happen and when more commitments start rolling in, we'll be in contact, and we'll get read his stuff on the Rivals National Desk. You'll see his stuff on our homepage as well at Scarlet and Gray Report. Follow him on Twitter at Rivals_Clint. My Twitter is Colin Gay at Colin Gay 17. Follow us on Twitter at Ohio ST_Rivals. And we'll see you next time. See you guys on the board.